Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the 25th episode of the Better Leader Podcast. Today, we are talking about how do you get out of the rut, or how do you get unstuck. And I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow along on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. When you rate and review, it does encourage me to just keep this thing going. And so I want to invite you to do that. But how do you get out of the rut? And what do I mean by that? Maybe you're just not firing on all cylinders. This can happen in any area of our life, really. Maybe it's in our leadership and actually the day-to-day work that we do. You might lack the fire, the fervor, the passion that you once had. This happens in friendships and relationships. It happens to us socially. In our marriage, it can happen. And so what do we do when we just feel like, man, things aren't clicking and I feel kind of stuck? I feel in a rut. Well, I'm going to tell you some practical things that have helped me through the years whenever I've maybe felt a little bit stuck. But what made me think of this is I was actually thinking back to a moment, and I was at Cheddars Scratch Kitchen, all right, fine dining establishment right here in Springfield, a food chain, actually. And so I love Cheddars. And I remember I was there, and it was when I was in college. It had been raining like crazy in Springfield during that season. And this F-250, like farm boss Ford truck had backed into a spot. And the truck was so large that when they backed in, the back tires went over the curb. And so those tires were on the grass and the other tires were on the concrete and the curb was in between. Well, why these people had went in to eat, what happened was the ground was so saturated, so wet that the truck had began to really kind of implant itself in that grass. And so when they came back to pull their truck out, the back tires were just spinning, rear wheel drive, right? They're just spinning and they're digging it deeper and deeper. And what happens is the body of that truck is lowering slowly over and over as they try and get out. It's going closer to the curb, and they were in a really bad situation. I mean, they were as stuck as you could be. And as I thought about this, I'm like, man, that's sometimes what it feels like in our lives. We're just spinning the tires, and while we're just sitting there trying to do the same thing over and over again, we're getting lower and lower and closer to a danger zone if we don't do something different. So when you're stuck, what do? One of the things that has helped me the most is the first thing that I really got to do is I just got to acknowledge, okay, I'm kind of stuck right now. I'm kind of in a rut right now. You've got to acknowledge that you're in a rut. It's hard to really combat something or deal with a problem if you don't identify and realize that it exists. So I need to do this. I need to, identify this myself and understand, okay, Logan, man, you're not firing on all cylinders. Take a step back and begin to evaluate why. So I need to acknowledge that to myself. And what really helps me in identifying this too is I need to acknowledge that to somebody else. If you're like me, I am very much an out loud verbal processor. So it really helps me to talk to someone else. And even if you're like, man, that's not my natural instinct or my inclination, you need to have people in your life. And I say multiple people. I have not only my wife that I can talk to, but also several close friends and people that I work with, mentors, that I can discuss, hey, I'm just not firing right now on all cylinders. And sometimes that's all I need to get out is just to acknowledge, hey, I'm not really clicking right now. And so you've got to be able to acknowledge it, because it's hard to combat something if you don't realize that it's going on. And I would say within that and kind of identifying that, it can also help me get back to, why am I doing what I'm doing anyways? If I'm not firing on all cylinders in my marriage, or I feel a little bit in a rut with Emma, maybe we're just not been on the same page, we got to get back to the why. Why did we get married in the first place? And we got to get back to what we want to see happen. What do we want for our family in 10 years, 20 years? In leadership or at work, there's always the mundane things. There's the things that you're going to do week after week. You're going to get past that honeymoon period with your work. And even if you really, I love my job. I really, really love my job. But even with a job that I love so much, there are still things that are going to feel like work. And you're going to have to get back to, why am I doing this in the first place? And what am I doing this for? What do I want to see happen? You got to get back to the why and the what once you've named that there's actually a problem. And I would encourage you got to talk to people about this. If you're going to try and get out of the rut on your own, it's not going to work. What's the second thing that helps me is when I change my pace and when I change my place. Change my pace and when I change my place, all right? So pace and place, What does that mean? So recently in the fall, I kind of hurt my back working out. It got worse as I was sick and coughing a lot. And if you know me and you've been around me, I talk about this because we love to talk about our ailments, right? And this really changed my pace because I've been doing some physical therapy. And within that therapy, some of what I need to do is at home, I need to really take a time to focus on mobility and strengthening my core. And that is definitely a change of pace for me where I'm laying on a yoga mat in my back room at my house, and I'm having to just work on these things and really do this to treat my back. And so as I've done that, what I've actually learned, it actually has turned out to be a really big blessing for me because it totally changed my pace. And what I found is that is one of my favorite times to put my headphones in. Maybe I'm a little weird. I like to listen to like nature sounds and whatever else. And I found that that's actually like my favorite time to pray in the mornings when I'm just, kind of activating my body, for lack of a better term, if you will. I've found that is a time when I love to pray. It's a time where I love to gather my thoughts for the day and just get to kind of talk with God. And it really is actually something that is going to continue to be a part of my life because I feel like it's a spiritual rhythm for me. But if my pace didn't change, I wouldn't have recognized that. Now, that was kind of a forced pace change, but I do think it's important for you to look and say, okay, if I'm moving really slow, maybe it's like my pace is very low right now. I'm not motivated to be around people. I think you need to go get around some people. And you need to change your pace in that way. You need to go invest in community. Maybe you're around people constantly, and that's a consistent part of what you've got going on. You need to change your pace by kind of going out into a desolate place, right? And that might sound kind of crazy, right? But seeking some of that isolation so that you can think through things. Now, I'm not saying you cut off community or you remove yourself from that, but I think there's a power in times if withdrawing and seeking, okay, what is happening in my life currently? And so you need to maybe change your pace. You may need to get around more people and invest in community. If you're highly invested in community, you need to maintain that investment, but you also need to have time on your own where you can process through, think through things, and pray through things. So you need to change your pace. The next thing that helps me is when I change my space. Recently, I had the opportunity to go with my wife on a 10-year anniversary trip. And for some reason, this happens to me. It could even be a weekend trip or, just traveling for a day for work or whatever else. Changing my space seems to kind of reset me. And it was while I was on vacation on this 10-year anniversary trip with my wife. I was just walking down the beach one day, and I was listening to an audiobook, and I feel like God used this book, Eat That Frog, to really just kind of remotivate me, re-inspire me. And it was like I had been in a rut leading up to that, and I had become like I had lacked discipline. I had just kind of gotten sloppy in my, approach to my day-to-day routine and things. And in that kind of moment to get away, and I was in a different space, it allowed me the opportunity to just be like, man, I got to get back to some of these core principles and practices that are going to make me more effective in life, that are going to make me a better leader also. And so, I think it's important evaluating, do I need to change my pace? And where could I fit into my schedule? Really changing my space, even if it's for an afternoon, even if it's for a weekend or a couple of days. How can you change your space? It has such a unique way of kind of resetting us, motivating us, and inspiring us as we head back to what we are normally doing. The third thing that I think about is this. We've acknowledged that we're in a rut. We understand that changing pace and space can help us. Then the third thing I think we have to understand, when you are in a rut and you feel stuck, sometimes you have to acknowledge this isn't a problem that's always going to go away overnight. I am probably one of the world's worst at, I want the microwave solution, right? I want the, when I injured my back, I would rather just someone pop my back and I'm good and I'm done with that. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes what we have to recognize is that we're not always going to get out of the rut right away. And that's okay, because sometimes some of the greatest growth you can have is when you feel stuck, when you have to dig deep, when you have to seek God in a new way, right? This is one of the best things that can happen for us is when we are in a rut. So we don't want to waste that season, but you want to have a vision, right? Maybe you feel stuck and it's not going to be for 50 yards or 100 yards or a mile down the road that you can really get out. But what you do have is you have a plan. you have a strategy, you have a recognition that there is a problem, and that can be the thing that will push you over the edge to get out of the rut as you continue to move forward. And so for me, because I am very achievement driven at times, or as many of you are as well, I think really all of us are in varying degrees, right? I can want to be like, no, I want this problem gone immediately. Right now, it needs to be gone. I want it out of my life. But what happens is if sometimes our greatest growth, we can want to just bypass that, and it's going to come from recognizing, okay, we are in the rut. How do we problem solve? How do we strategize? What do I need to do in my life to teach me healthy practices later on? So having a vision that, hey, this might not end in one day, but if I'm patient, if I take a deep breath, if I slow down, I can get out of this eventually with a proper plan and a proper strategy, the right people around me, and asking God to help me within this. Is having a vision that this might not end in a day. That's not the worst thing. I can accept that. But how do I get out down the road, and how can this help me to stay out of the rut in the future? And so those are some things that I found that help me whenever I get stuck. And the motivation and the inspiration behind talking about this is you are a leader. You've got influence. You've got people who are around you who are counting on you, whether it's your family, your friends, the people in your workplace. You have a calling and a purpose. And so you don't want to be stuck and inundated by inaction and indecisiveness, but you want to have a drive and a passion and a purpose in your life, and you want other people to see that as well. And so the motivation is, man, don't stay stuck, right? But develop a plan, develop a strategy to get out of the rut, because you've got important things to do. I want to thank you for joining us today for the Better Leader podcast. We'll catch you next time.